Let's talk about the state of AI. Just like you, I have fears about how AI is going to impact my life. But here, I will show you what I do and where I will bet. And this is more of like a work in progress and a thought process on what is likely going to be successful and what is not. There are several concepts that I'll discuss, such as competitive advantage and how you position yourself based on what's available. So most people don't know that we are in the age of information, but we are in the age of assimilation. The age of assimilation is where information is abundant. It's everywhere. It's there already. But people don't know how to assimilate it, or it doesn't get assimilated the way it should be, or it doesn't get to the right person. And here comes the positioning that you should take. What are the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that you should have to prepare yourself for the future on how AI will help you in the future? So let's start with the easy one in terms of what you should be doing, right? So first is in terms of beliefs. Right? So let's start with beliefs. I think you should stop with the limiting beliefs. Like, people have made this argument before that calculators will replace accountant. It doesn't. If you have an overwhelmingly popular or overwhelmingly superior competitor or entrant in the market, how do you position yourself? Except, let's be honest about that, as humans, you will be underdogs to some degree. So I'll explain this a little bit in terms of competitive advantage and comparative advantage or absolute advantage. If somebody has an absolute advantage, for example, the US has more land fields compared to the Philippines, does that mean that the Philippines will never create rice? Because they have an absolute advantage. For us to have an advantage, we'll have to use our competitive advantage or comparative advantage. But for you to be able to still produce a healthy economy, you should still produce rice either way. You have to shine on what you're good at relative to, let's say you can only produce 10 goods and they can make 100 goods. You will still make those 10 goods in some form or fashion. Playing the underdog is very important when you're entering a market that is going to be saturated by AI. And in AIs will saturate. Another thing that you can position yourself when thinking about AI is that some AI models will mature faster than other language models. And even if it were, you're fretting about something that you don't have any control or influence on. Work on the things that you have influence on. And I think this causes a lot of anxiety for people because, yes, there's AI, but I'm not in any position to control that anyway. Why would you even spend the effort? If there's a solution to a problem, then just do that. If there's no solution, why bother? It will impact you anyway, but you still need to solve for your problems, and your anxiety is not going to help you anyway. Okay? So position yourself in a way that you are taking things of the things you have control of. You can try to influence things, but that's not your goal or how you're interfacing with AI. So that's another belief you should approach this with. Another limiting belief that a lot of people don't is that they don't even start studying what it is. So a lot of people still don't know what a join is. They don't know what a library is. They don't know conditionals. They would say, I have no coding knowledge, and just stop there. And that is a belief that will, where it will lead to. So these are some of the beliefs that you should adapt when facing AI. Okay? Number 2 is skills. Okay, so AI skills. AI skills, I think, has just mostly been prompt generation. And the reason is because most AI that become popular are text-based, which means that the mode that you communicate information to AI is through text. And this has always been a problem I saw when it came to the internet, because there's no way for you to look for things except for text. Another is AI knowledge. So this becomes the trends, the versions, how you should stay up to date with a positive attitude, of course, that, okay, so here's a new model, here's that model, this is where this will go, this is where that will go. You should limit this actually to your domain of expertise. The third part is execution. A lot of people know what AI 1 or AI 2 or AI 3 does, but not a lot of people can execute to an end product. When I say I want a logo, and you would see this logo generation AI, they're all the same. They feel limited. And there's that lack of inspiration or lack of ability to communicate the context. If I was making a logo for someone, they tried to tell me what it is, I tell them, hey, just try using this one. This is free. Why do you need to consult with me? Because they would usually say, I've tried this and it doesn't work. It doesn't seem to give me something that's appealing to me. So there is a lack of people to communicate, right? Their ability to communicate to me what they need, or the ability to communicate, or patience to communicate with a language model. So communication is one of the skills that's very important as it comes to the future. It's because information is only useful when it's shared. So that means when you have information, and everybody has the same information, the first one who gets information to the right person solves a problem. But information is limited to that. It's not the outcome. We've escalated the society's norms from knowledge and information to closer to outcomes. So it raises the bar and the production possibilities further, because it will give us the ability to have a higher base to start off from information. People who recruit artists or have tasks done would have a better advantage if they're able to talk in the AI language with people who are trying to get hired. So if your goal is to become somebody who's hired, then do that. If your goal is to hire somebody, then your ability to communicate will dictate the type and quality of people you can recruit. We're going to go to the knowledge in a bit, because I'm going to share an experience that I had when I was doing knowledge transfer. I was sent to another country by a company, and they were saying, okay, go to this process, move it to the Philippines, improve on that process, automate it, blah, 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 right? So during that experience, I realized that we're going to go to the knowledge, right, that you should have. Realized that I had a very different assimilation technique when it comes to knowledge. I had to put it top down, and I had to map it on how it connects from the dots from left to right. And my assimilation technique was very different from the people who were with me, who were a lot of accountants. This was an order to cash process or cash collection process, credit collection process, where the problem was that they thought of it from the same financial perspective. I had a different way of trying to understand it as a newbie. There was an advantage because I knew to it, and in my experience, I've been transferred to multiple organizations in multiple domains, and that's what I do. I specialize in going to something new, learning the thing fast, transitioning it, and teaching it, right? So I realized that since I've been to multiple domains, multiple time zones, multiple practices, my assimilation technique was a lot different. This is the knowledge that you should have. The knowledge you should have preset, or people would call it skill, would be your ability to accept information and process it and put it out. So compared to the skill before that you execute, this is how you ingest information. So knowledge would slowly erode, but it would become deeper on how you use knowledge. So your assimilation technique is very important. So I learned this health process, I learned this insurance process, I learned this order to crash process, I learned this oil and gas process, I learned this SAS process, but I saw a common thread, and there was like one translates to one thing to the other, and I would say that I saw myself as a translator, right? Another is iteration techniques. So when you are absorbing knowledge, you iterate it. So my method of assimilating knowledge techniques was basic from before, and as I moved to different domains, that changed over time and that transformed. And your iteration technique is your own. And I think nobody can take that away from you, because that is your own algorithm. Okay, and I've been improving this algorithm as I've been going through different industries, right? But I'm saying that this is always a learning banking thing for me. It's a static type of growth. It will never beat what AI will do, but it's something that is very important and crucial for my success. Another is classification and segmenting of information. And this is where a lot of people have that gap when assimilating knowledge. They are not able to tag why something is confusing, and sometimes it's just what is this information that's presented. So I'll give you an example. When I was doing coaching for calls for phone interactions, pretty common industry in the Philippines, I would see that the trend is that one person will reply in a cycle of, in the karma of communication, one reply, two replies, two replies, four replies. There is a non-smoothness in that communication. What does that mean? It means that one does not recognize the number of information that's presented and how to address them systematically. And most of the time, it is an implied thought, an explicit communication, and an underlying emotion. So if you address this, the normal trend is like this, right? And it depends on how you want to portray yourself, what variation of reply you would want, so that communication goes one way to one way, one way to one way. And that is usually solved by classification of information and segmenting it. So the reason why I'm able to address concerns, even at a high level conversation of C-suite, is because I know what they're trying to ask, and I'm trying to understand not just from the one dimension, but from the two dimension and the three dimension of what their goal is, right? And there's so many ways that you can segment information, but these are all your own algorithms. And you have to think like that because you have your own algorithm that's unique, right? You don't have any choice but to embrace who you are when you're trying to assimilate with something that is uncertain. If you lost everything and you had nothing, which likely will happen, you would need to stick to your guts. You would need to stick to what you're good at. Sponge techniques. Just going back to transition, I remember my boss, I always heard this from her. How the hell did you remember that? She would always tell me that. And I don't know what it was. It's because the way I sponge information is different from how they did it. And that's what made me special. I just embraced my difference. And I think this is the type of knowledge you should have. How do I absorb information, right? I would call sponging and assimilation different because for me, assimilation is my technique of how I produce libraries. And sponging is the input of data. But that's just how I think of it, right? But you could have your own terms to describe how you gain information. So these are the three things that I think that are important when you're interfacing with AI. Beliefs, skills, right, and knowledge. So, on top of that, I also want to discuss depth. And I discovered this when I was doing process mapping. When doing depth, I think you become a specialist when you do depth. I'll give you an example. I'm trying to automate something. When I try to talk to an associate, the only thing that's always missing is how does this connect to this? And it's because sometimes certain steps are automated. And because there's somebody new, they don't really know how to do that. And as much as team leads or managers or SMEs don't want the process automation expert to talk to them because they're busy, that is the one that will solve the problem. And you have to get their buy-in. And that emotional thing will be lost. And I'm so happy we don't have to talk about that because I've seen so many meetings in my life that I had to sit through, but the goal was useless. And I'm looking forward to this AI that's gonna screen through the meetings and just come up with a summary. Because a lot of people just want to ruminate and talk. They're not clear on what they want, right? I think that ANIs or narrow intelligence will be the first to become adapted, right? And there's no fear there because I remember watching this video about architects versus AI where the floor plans, the visualization was faster, but the floor plan did not make sense from a living perspective if the person was going to go through and live through there. How do I eat? Which rooms do I consume at each stage? And the problem only is because that language library did not have the ability to understand the context of living. And soon as it does, it will replace it, right? But that's already a very niche, narrow intelligence that will replace humans really quickly. And I think ANIs will take it really farther, faster, right? In terms of general knowledge and scale, ANI will become faster than general knowledge. In summary, if you are fearful of AI, here are the things that I think are important and where I would bet on. I hope that's helpful. Thank you for watching. Follow for more.